When her body was found burned in her home, it was clear the fire had been set on purpose. Decades later, with advances in technology, DNA at the scene was matched to a man who lived 600 feet away from her. So it's solved, right? Well, apparently not in everybody's eyes. This is the story of Tara Louise Baker, the law student whose case seems like an open and shut one to me, but apparently not to everyone else. Hi friends, I'm Katie, and this is Katie Does Crime. Thank you for joining me for the first time if you're new here. I'm a Midwesterner who now lives in New York City, putting my writing degree to use by researching true crime cases that interest me, and hopefully you. And hello to the usual rapscallions and reprobates. Please consider subscribing or joining me on Patreon if you'd like to hear more true crime stories. This is one of those cases that I've had a Google alert on for years, waiting for something to happen. The day that I got my first alert felt like Christmas morning or something. It started on January 19th, 2001 at 11:20 a.m. when firefighters were called to a burning brick house on the east side of Athens, Georgia. All 4 burners on the kitchen stove were running on full blast, and the fire was coming through the roof. The body of 23-year-old Tara Louise Baker was found on the floor inside of a locked bedroom, and the police were sure that the fire had been set to conceal the homicide. Tara was a first-year student at the University of Georgia Law School, and it was the day before her birthday. She had graduated from Georgia College in 1998 with her poli-sci and legal assistance degrees and taken a few years away from academia to work as a real estate paralegal. She'd been trying to get up the nerve to go to law school, and then she finally did it, only to find herself murdered in her first year. A high school classmate said, "When this happened, I said, who in the world would murder her? It couldn't be someone who knows her because she doesn't have an enemy in the world." 2 months later, the reward fund for information about her killing was up to $26,000, and despite an FBI profiler working the case, there was very little movement. I couldn't find any newspaper clippings from April or May 2001, and when a couple of articles were printed in June and August, they were just to say that the police were still investigating. On the 1-year anniversary of her death, her family lamented to the media that terrible thoughts were clouding their wonderful memories of Tara. They said the cops didn't have much to go on because the fire took most of the evidence. Her dad called Tara the captain of that little ship as the oldest of her siblings. He said they tried to make new holiday traditions so the lack of Tara wouldn't cut quite so deeply. By January 2003, no more articles about her were being published. By January 2004, the University of Georgia School of Law had awarded Tara an honorary degree. The local authorities said ceremonies like that can be helpful to investigators because they can jog people's memories. He said often the public doesn't remember, the police remember, her family remembers, but someone might hear something next week. Ceremonies like this one help keep it fresh in the public's mind. The police still hadn't even released the cause of death at this point because they wanted some of the details held back for when they finally interviewed a suspect. No death certificate had even been issued because then the way Tara died would be public. The authorities only said that Tara's laptop was stolen and that a white male in a white t-shirt and jeans had been seen running from the scene. It was finally in 2017 that the cause of death was revealed when officers who had since retired agreed to talk anonymously to the press about the case. They said Tara had been beaten, stabbed, strangled, and assaulted. They theorized that she might have known her killer. Maybe he stole her laptop to keep something like emails between them away from the police. Her boyfriend at the time had an alibi that checked out, but an unnamed person of interest had come into the picture around 2010. These retired officers said the case had been worked tirelessly. There was just virtually no physical evidence because of soot from the fire, water from the fire hoses, and contamination from firefighters who were just doing their jobs. The years continued to go by. And then, out of nowhere, in May 2024, an arrest was made in the case. Edrick Faust was charged with malice and felony murder, aggravated assault, concealing the death of another, arson, possession of a knife during the commission of a felony, tampering with evidence, and aggravated sodomy. Faust's lawyer pronounces his last name Faust, but literally everyone else says Faust, so I'm going to stick with that. A Georgia Bureau of Investigation's cold case unit had started a review of the case in September 2023, and Faust was a suspect by April. The arrest warrant said that he had strangled Tara, stabbed her in the neck, and hit her in the head with a blunt object. 25 years old at the time, he had assaulted her before setting her house on fire. After a lifetime of criminal behavior and dozens of charges, he was now 48 years old. He had absolutely no relationship with Tara, but he had lived a few blocks from her. The authorities said he broke into her apartment, stabbed her, strangled her with a printer cord, assaulted her, sodomized her, and lit a blanket on fire on the stove to put in the bedroom with Tara's body. At a hearing in August 2024, the DA said the crime was severe enough and Faust's criminal history was long enough that he should be denied bond. I mean, just to give you an idea of this guy's arrests, there's possession with intent to distribute, reckless driving, possession of a controlled substance, driving under the influence, driving with a suspended license, obstructing an officer, more possession, possession again, driving under the influence again, leaving the scene of an accident, domestic battery, simple battery, disorderly conduct, criminal trespass. The list goes on from 2001 to 2022. And worst of all, less than a month after he killed Tara, Faust stabbed a man in the neck with a knife and got a year in prison and 6 years of probation. He had also violated his parole more than 20 times. Faust's fiancée testified, though, that he'd been on the straight and narrow for the past 3 years. So the DA asked if she knew that he'd been arrested for battery in 2022, and oops, no, she didn't know that. So yeah, he was denied bond. Faust's trial was originally scheduled for October 2025, but the defense requested an extension due to the extensive amount of evidence, which is kind of interesting for a case where there was so little physical evidence. Evidently, there were over 25,000 digital files and over 1,600 folders from the years and years of investigation. But just as the trial was set to start, the defense filed a motion saying that the judge was biased against Faust. They said the judge was invested in Mr. Faust's conviction regardless of his guilt or innocence. For instance, the judge had refused a subpoena for a witness who might have said that Faust wasn't violent toward her. And when Faust's lawyer objected once in court, the judge replied, "I'm just going to tell you right now that's not a thing." Spicy judge. But also, the defense was asking to exclude testimony about how Faust cut that other man in the neck in 2001 when Tara was also stabbed in the neck. So I have no tolerance for their antics either. A second judge ruled that the presiding judge could stay on the case. At trial in February 2026, a medical examiner testified that Tara had been stabbed from behind and had defensive wounds on her hands. Her jugular vein was punctured, and her brain had hemorrhaged from the strangulation. The assault left bruises on her genital area. And maybe worst of all, he said that soot in her throat would show that she was still alive when her killer set her bed on fire. The assistant DA said it's true that there were no fingerprints, hair, anything like that at the scene of the crime that would point to any suspects. At the time, the DNA test didn't lead anywhere. But when new agents were assigned to the case in 2023, modern tests found the profiles of 3 people: Tara, her boyfriend, and another man. This man's DNA was in her mouth and her vagina. And using a match from a national database, they found Faust, and his DNA was a match. Faust didn't know Tara, but he did live just about 2 football fields away from her. But at the trial, Faust's defense objected to the prosecution calling it a DNA match, saying that it's merely a probability that Faust was the guy. You know, like a probability of 1 in 800 quadrillion. The defense called for a mistrial, a thing that they would try again and again to no success.
Yes, sir. Your Honor, I am again moving for a mistrial. We can't impeach witnesses. We can't argue consent. The state can present things that we can't present. We can't rebut allegations in their indictment. We are requesting a mistrial. This is not fair. This trial has been worse than practicing in communist Russia. He doesn't stand a chance in this courtroom, Your Honor.
The defense lawyers said that no one had seen Faust at the scene of the crime, but of course someone had seen a person matching his description at the scene and helped make a police sketch. The defense said there was no other physical evidence tying Faust to Tara's home, but someone had wiped down the doorknobs and then, purposely set fire to the house to help erase evidence. The defense said Caucasian hairs were found on Tara and Faust is black, but those same hairs were also found in Tara's carpet, which her naked body was lying on. The defense said firefighters had to kick down the dead-bolted front door when they arrived, so how did someone leave without a key? But firefighters testified that a screen on a window had been tampered with. The defense said Faust wasn't on the police's radar for over 20 years, so how did they just suddenly come up with him as a suspect? And I'm just like, that's how cold cases work? So the police should have written a little blurb in their notebooks about every stranger who lived within a mile of Tara just in case? The defense also tried to blame the victim for being a loose woman who might have just been sleeping with Faust behind her boyfriend's back, which is a common defense tactic that never gets less offensive to me. The thing is, Faust himself admitted to the police that he didn't know Tara. He wasn't even trying the old "it was consensual" story. The defense brought in Tara's boyfriend at the time to try to pin it on him, even though he was seen on camera at a bank far away at the time of the murder and had an all-day alibi that multiple people testified to. They said his hands were suspiciously all wrecked on the day Tara was found dead, but that's because he punched a wall out of frustration in losing the girlfriend he loved the day after they found her. The defense said that in a later police interview, he told police that he hadn't seen Tara in 10 days before she died. But years had passed at that point, and what he meant is that he'd last seen her at college 10 days before. He'd seen her at his parents' house the weekend before she was killed. It felt to me like the defense was just throwing things at the wall to see what stuck. The jury found Faust guilty on all 12 felony counts, and he was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 45 years in prison. Tara's family said, "For more than 2 decades, we have lived with the absence of the life she was building. We have imagined the attorney she would have become, the causes she would have championed, and the people she would have helped. That future was taken from her in an act of violence that forever altered our family." Tara, the firstborn, was known as a great role model for her younger brothers and sister, and a beacon of kindness and inclusivity at school. Her grandfather called her the personification of the all-American girl, and though she could come off as shy to those who didn't know her, her close friends said she was bright and funny. One friend said they called themselves the fashion police, and you could come to them if you wanted to know not to wear white after Labor Day or velvet after Valentine's Day. Her sister said everyone had a very special relationship with Tara. People who hadn't seen her in years could walk up to her and she would start talking as if you were the only person in the world at that moment. Now, I will say that this was a pretty open and shut case for me. Tara was sadly murdered. The trail went cold, decades went by, and then advances in DNA technology proved that a neighbor who claimed to have never met her left his semen in her mouth and vagina. All of the news sources I read were on the same page. But there was this one thing I heard at the trial that I hadn't seen anyone write about. The prosecution said that hair found in Tara's hand proved nothing, but the defense said that the hair proved the killer was a white person. So I went searching and ended up in the dregs of the internet. And I found that a lot of people on Reddit and Facebook think there's a conspiracy against Faust, that he didn't get a fair trial, that the DNA proves nothing, that Tara's boyfriend had changed his story, and on and on. I've already covered the things that I thought were worth mentioning and how they can easily be explained, like the hairs and the boyfriend's hands. I understand that the defense has to try to make a case to save their client, but it all just seems like smoke and mirrors to me. And yet it seems like a lot of people saw the defense lawyer showboating and declaring a mistrial and were won over by his tactics. So many times someone would say something online like, "She wasn't a neighbor," and then someone else would say, "They lived like 600 feet apart?" And the first person would say, "Oh, oops." I understand that being convicted for a crime you didn't do is basically the scariest thing a lot of us can imagine, and we want to fight to make sure justice is being served. But I do beg you to watch the trial footage before you go reading Reddit. To leave you on a positive note here, the Georgia governor signed a bill into law in 2023 that was named after Tara and another victim of murder. The Coleman-Baker Act gives families the right to request a review of their loved one's cold case and make sure all available forensic testing has been performed. So hopefully we'll see more cases like Tara's get solved in the coming years. Unless, of course, you don't agree that hers has been solved. As always, please let me know what you think about this case in the comments. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm just a true crime fan like you are, and I really appreciate you taking a chance on me. Please like and subscribe to my channel if you like spending this time together. I would be so appreciative. Until next time, I'm Katie, and this has been Katie Does Crime.